The Enemy Below from 1957 is, in my estimation, one of the greatest war movies ever made. I've seen it several times, and there's just so much I love about this film. In fact, I was writing out my notes for this, and I can't believe how much I put down. What I love about this film is that it's so untraditional. It doesn't feel like so much of the film stuff that we see today. It doesn't get bogged down with secondary characters, ridiculous subplots, or mindless, droning exposition. This is just a straight-up classic war film about two brilliant captains, one American, one German. We're in the Second World War, and these two are sparring against one another out in the ocean. One is in a destroyer on the surface, and the other is in a U-boat submarine below the waves. And, again, I see things from Hollywood today, and if it's so amazingly stupid, it really helps to remind me that there are films like this one that I can always come back to. And honestly, there's not too much to say about the story here. Robert Mitchum is just cool as can be, plays this American commander, Captain Murrell, on the destroyer, and Kurt Jurgens plays the German commander who's in the submarine below the water. Now, here's something I love about this film. There's no long, sappy send-off, no drawn-out scenes of exposition in a commander's office, looking at charts and planning out everything, blah, blah, blah. No, the film literally opens up out on the South Atlantic, and it zooms in on that American destroyer. I mean, we just get right to the action. We hear the dialogue of some of the sailors. They're speculating about the new captain. It's just enough background to get us curious about who he is. Some of the officers are playing cards, and they're talking about this new captain. And, including the opening credits, we're talking maybe 7 minutes of the film. Then the sonar kicks in, and it picks up the spook in the water. It gets that little bing, and there's the good and the rousing music, and boom, we're off and running. It's awesome. Robert Mitchum plays this Captain Murrell. He shows up, and he gets right down to business. The guy's 100% cool. He's studying the sonar and the path of the other ship. And, he's a great character in this. I mean, he just carries this film. It's also kind of cool to see his friendship he has with the ship's doctor. And that's something I've noticed in other films I've seen as well. There's just something about that. I think it was the Star Trek pilot where it was Captain Pike. He had a friendship with the doctor in that as well. And I've seen it in other movies too. So we cut to the German submarine under the water. And it's commanded by it's Kurt Jurgens. He plays this German commander, von Stolberg, and who, with his officers, they're likewise studying the path of the destroyer up above. And again, it's 12 minutes into the film, and the cat and mouse game begins. I mean, we don't waste any time. Yeah, Mitchum gets on the intercom, speaks to his crew to prepare them for battle. It's going to start at dawn. And the German commander, meanwhile, he gives this directive to kind of continue on with this hourly zigzag pattern underneath the water. And what I really respected about this film is that the German commander, this von Stolberg, he isn't painted as a lunatic or just a generic bad guy. But from the very beginning, we see that he is a real human being. He has real thoughts, concerns. You can see he's gotten burned out of this. And now we can see he does not approve of this German Nazi direction that it's going. In fact, at one point, they have a sign up in the sub, Führer Befehl wie folgen or something. It's as the leader commands, we follow. So that's hanging up in the sub. And you see the captain just kind of throw a sweaty towel over it. So with one little gesture, we kind of get it, He's not really happy about the war and the war's direction, and he's kind of burned out from his years of experience. But that doesn't mean that he's not going to do an amazing job commanding this submarine. He's got the lives of all his officers here, and he is just as brilliant and cunning with his strategy as Robert Mitchum is up on the surface. And so he takes a drink before taking a nap, but he does, like Robert Mitchum's character, this German captain also has some time. He confides to a friend about, his tiredness of this war and how mechanical everything has become. And he even makes the quote about they've taken the human out of war. I thought that was really interesting. He's talking about the machinery and everything. And We cut back to Captain Murrell up on the surface in the destroyer. They're still in this pursuit game. And we get a little bit more of his backstory. He confides to the doctor about, his past, how he was in he lost his wife in this calamity at sea, and this is part of why he chose to serve on the destroyer, so that he could go out and bring destruction. And, it's not a lot of exposition, but just enough to get to know these two captains and who they are. Yeah, I love that. So the battle really starts to pick up, and we get to the core of the film, which is just the back and forth, the battle strategy of these two captains. So von Stolberg fires torpedoes, and Murrell, who's kind of predicted this to happen, is able to shift the destroyer in time to avoid the impact. And it's really cool as you watch the ship turn and the torpedoes go shooting by. The effects aren't always perfect, but they are very convincing for the most part. So then he continues the attack with a series of depth charges that he is sending out on a regular basis. And, a credit to the special effects of the time. I thought that the depth explosions look amazing when they show that huge shower of water. So the conflict continues with Captain Murrell trying to track down the path of the sub. Meanwhile, underwater, von Stolberg is using his own tricks and strategies as well. And one of his tricks is to bring the sub to the furthest depth and have it just sit in silence. And then there's the sitting and the waiting, and the tension is amazing. The Germans all look nervous and sweaty as they're silently below the ocean. And man, just thinking about it, all these sweaty German guys in this enclosure, it must have smelled pretty rank. But yeah, anyhow, back to the story. So they're both kind of running silent, and I thought it was really kind of neat how they showed the parallel of the sailors above and below. Again, they don't really demonize one side or the other. I mean, yes, we know that the Germans are technically like the bad guys, but they do show that there's a human side. The officers up on the boat up above, one of them's reading The Fall of the Roman Empire, and another one's reading an Orphan Annie comic book. And then down on the submarine, there's two of the officers. One's reading Mein Kampf, and then another one's just kind of laughing as he reads a newspaper. They're playing, chess and just kind of occupying the time. But it shows that there's a human side. There's humans above and below, and they're all in this battle. And eventually, the submarine it resumes with its moving. The depth charges continue. And von Stolberg, who's kind of studying the pattern, he starts to realize that this Captain Murrell is using a pattern, and he puts that to use. And what follows is this amazing, literally explosive conclusion to the battle of these two rival captains. And it's an amazing scene. And both of these captains, it's really cool to watch. They eventually grow to have this respect and admiration for one another. It's an amazing war film, and I would say one of the best made. Robert Mitchum and Kurt Jurgens are just perfect in their respective lead roles here. You got to check this film out. And as I did some of the research on this, it's really interesting to see some of the comments and some of the side notes, how I believe this was an inspiration for the classic Star Trek episode that was called Balance of Terror. It came out in 1966, where you had actor Mark Leonard as the Romulan commander. And it's a very similar cat and mouse battle that's taking place between him and Captain Kirk over in the Enterprise. And arguably, that's one of the best episodes of the original series. And you can definitely see elements of this film and how it could have been an inspiration. So with many of the films I watch, just a side note, you can usually find them on Amazon Prime, the local library, or I even find a lot of these films from my dad's collection. And sometimes it's even on the Internet Archive if I review a public domain film. But this film, for some strange reason, is on YouTube, so you can actually check it out there, I guess, until they take it down. But if they do, it's still worth paying the $2.99 to rent it on Prime. So, again, that is The Enemy Below from 1957. It's an extraordinary war movie. Go and check this one out.